The outcast among the stars. The neon glow of Terra Station reflected off the metal walkways, casting eerie blue shadows against the walls. The place was alive. Humans, aliens, and synthetic beings moved about, voices clashing in a chaotic blend of languages. Linder kept his hood up, moving swiftly through the marketplace, his crystalline skin catching the artificial light despite his efforts to hide. "Don't let them see you," he reminded himself, his fingers gripping the folds of his robe. He had learned the hard way that his kind, the Draenei, were not welcome here. His glowing veins, shifting between deep violet and silver, made him stand out. Some people stared. Others whispered. A few sneered openly. Terra Station claimed to be a hub of unity and progress, but for Linder, it was a prison of prejudice. A moment of trouble. He kept moving, trying to reach the supply depot unnoticed. He just needed a few tools, enough to repair his damaged comm device. If he could fix it, he could finally send a signal home. But just as he turned a corner, a rough hand grabbed his shoulder. "Hey, freak. You lost?" Linder tensed. He recognized the voice. Graf, a human dock worker, and his gang stood in his path. They had harassed him before. "Just passing through," Linder said, his voice calm despite the tension in his body. Graf smirked. "Don't think we want your kind passing through. You might contaminate the air." His friends laughed. Linder started to back away, but Graf stepped closer, his voice dropping into something more dangerous. "Why don't you take your creepy glowing skin and get off this station before someone decides to make you leave?" Before Linder could respond, a new voice cut in. "Why don't you back off before someone decides to break your jaw?" The humans turned as Dane, a rugged-looking mechanic covered in grease stains, leaned against a supply crate, arms crossed. Graf scoffed. "This isn't your fight, Dane." "Then why do you look so nervous?" Dane pushed off the crate, stepping between Linder and the gang. "You need 5 guys to gang up on one. That's pathetic." Graf hesitated. He knew Dane, and more importantly, he knew Dane wasn't afraid of a fight. With an annoyed grunt, he waved his men off. "Not worth my time." As they left, Linder let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. An unlikely ally. "You okay?" Dane asked, looking Linder over. Linder hesitated. "You didn't have to do that." Dane shrugged. "Didn't like watching some cowards gang up on one guy. That's simple." He turned to leave, but something in Linder's chest tightened. He had been alone for so long. "Wait," Linder said. "You're a mechanic, right?" Dane raised an eyebrow. "Yeah. So?" Linder pulled out his damaged comm device. "I need help fixing this." Dane took the device, turning it over in his hands. "Where'd you get tech like this?" "Looks custom-built." Linder hesitated. "It's complicated." Dane studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Fine. Bring it to my shop tomorrow. But if you turn out to be some kind of intergalactic fugitive, I don't want to know." Linder felt something strange stir inside him. For the first time in years, someone had helped him. The beginning of something new. Linder spent the night in the lower levels of Terra Station, hiding among old cargo crates, unable to sleep. His people had warned him about humans. They were unpredictable. Self-serving. Dangerous. But Dane had stood up for him. Was it possible that not all humans were the same? As Linder stared up at the artificial sky of Terra Station, he made a decision. Tomorrow, he would go to Dane's shop. And maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to be alone anymore. Fragile trust. The mechanical whir of automated loaders filled the air as Linder approached the industrial sector of Terra Station. The entire area smelled of burned metal and grease, and workers bustled about, carrying spare parts and tools. In the middle of the chaos stood Dane's workshop, a cluttered but functional space wedged between 2 towering storage units. Linder hesitated at the entrance. Was this a mistake? His kind were rarely welcomed anywhere, and he had no reason to believe a human, especially one he barely knew, would be any different. But Dane had helped him. And right now, he had no other options. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The mechanic's world. Dane was hunched over a workbench, sparks flying as he welded a damaged thruster coil. He didn't look up. You actually showed up. Guess I owe myself 10 credits. Linder tilted his head. You were betting against yourself? Dane grinned. Nah. I just like being right. He wiped the grease from his hands and gestured to a nearby stool. Alright, let's see your tech. Linder placed the broken comm device on the table. The sleek, black surface was cracked, and tiny violet lights flickered weakly along its edges. Dane whistled. This is Draenei tech, huh? Never seen one up close. Linder nodded. It's important to me. Dane grabbed a scanner and ran it over the device. After a few seconds, he frowned. Someone messed with this. Linder's fingers curled. What do you mean? Dane pointed at the scan results. The damage isn't natural. Looks like someone tampered with the power core. Probably wanted to block your signal. Linder's heart pounded. Someone had deliberately sabotaged his only way home. A warning unheeded. Before Linder could respond, the workshop door slammed open. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a security uniform stepped inside, flanked by 2 armed officers. Commander Voss. Linder had seen his face before, on the station's security broadcasts. He was one of the most powerful humans on Terra Station, known for his anti-alien policies. His cold, calculating eyes landed on Linder, then shifted to Dane. You've been associating with off-world scum, Dane. Dane leaned against his workbench, unimpressed. Nice to see you too, Voss. Voss ignored him and took a step toward Linder. Draenei aren't welcome here. I'd suggest you leave before you make things worse for yourself. Linder clenched his jaw but said nothing. Dane sighed. He's not doing anything wrong. Voss smiled, but there was no warmth in it, helping an alien outcast. Not smart, Dane. We both know the Draenei aren't to be trusted. Dane's expression darkened. Yeah. Last time I checked, you're not the authority on trustworthiness. One of the officers tightened his grip on his weapon. Voss's smile thinned. Just a friendly warning. We wouldn't want any accidents happening, would we? He turned and walked out, his officers following. The workshop door slammed shut behind them. Linder let out a slow breath. He'll be back. Dane ran a hand through his hair. Yeah. I figured. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Dane exhaled. Well, guess that means I'm officially involved in your mess now. He grinned. Might as well make it worth it. Let's fix your comm. Linder stared at him, surprised. You're not afraid? Dane shrugged. Voss has been trying to scare me off this station for years. I'm still here. A strange feeling settled in Linder's chest. Trust. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't completely alone. But deep down, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Hunted for being different. The soft hum of the station's ventilation system filled Dane's workshop as he worked on Linder's damaged comm device. The scanner's blue light flickered across his face as he carefully examined the circuits, trying to undo whatever sabotage had been done. Linder sat nearby, unnaturally still, his glowing veins pulsing faintly under his crystalline skin. He was lost in thought, replaying Voss's words over and over. Draenei aren't welcome here. It wasn't the first time he'd heard something like that. But this time, it felt different. More dangerous. A coded threat. Dane cursed under his breath as a tiny spark shot from the comm device. Whoever messed with this didn't just block your signal, they wired it to overload if you tried to fix it. Linder's eyes widened, meaning. Dane held up the device. If I hadn't caught it in time, the moment you powered this thing back up, it would have fried your entire system. Maybe even electrocuted you. Linder clenched his fists. Someone doesn't want me contacting my people. Dane leaned back against the workbench, rubbing his jaw. Yeah, and we both know who that someone is. Linder's mind raced. Commander Voss wasn't just trying to intimidate him. He wanted to erase him. I need to leave, Linder said abruptly, standing up. It's too dangerous for me to stay here. I shouldn't have involved you. Dane scoffed. Too late for that, buddy. Linder turned toward the door, but Dane's voice stopped him. You really think running will help? Linder froze. Dane crossed his arms. You leave now, and Voss will just hunt you down. You stay, and maybe, just maybe, we figure out what he's so afraid of. Linder hesitated. He hated the idea of dragging Dane deeper into this. But he also knew Dane was right. Voss wasn't just after him. He was after something bigger. And Linder had no idea what it was. The hunt begins. Before Linder could respond, the station alarm blared. Dane's face darkened. That's not good. Linder turned toward the workshop's small window. Outside, security officers swarmed the lower levels, blocking exits, scanning IDs, and questioning civilians. They were looking for someone. Linder didn't need to guess who. Dane grabbed his tool belt and tossed Linder a hooded cloak. Put this on. We're getting out of here. You don't have to do this, Linder said, but Dane just rolled his eyes. Yeah, just move. They slipped out the back entrance, blending into the chaotic movement of the industrial sector. The air smelled like hot metal and oil, and the sound of heavy machinery masked their hurried footsteps. Linder kept his head down, but he could feel eyes on him. The security patrols were tightening their search. They were running out of time. The chase. As they neared an old supply corridor, Dane pulled Linder into a shadowed alcove. Change of plans, he whispered. We can't make it to the docks, too many guards. But I know another way off the grid. Linder gave him a questioning look, but Dane only grinned. Trust me. They moved quickly, weaving through the labyrinth of abandoned maintenance tunnels beneath the station. The further they went, the darker and quieter it became. But just as they neared an old airlock hatch, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Halt! A security officer stood at the tunnel's entrance, weapon raised. Linder's breath caught. The officer's expression shifted as he saw Linder's glowing veins beneath the cloak. Found him. Before Linder could react, Dane grabbed a nearby pipe and swung. The officer crumpled to the ground. Come on, Dane hissed, dragging Linder forward. They sprinted down the tunnel, reaching the airlock just as more footsteps echoed behind them. This leads to the abandoned cargo bay, Dane said, punching in an override code. If we make it there, we're off their scanners. The hatch hissed open. But before they could step through, a voice rang out behind them. You can't run forever. They turned to see Commander Voss, flanked by two officers, his pistol aimed directly at Linder. Step away from the alien, Dane. A standoff. Dane positioned himself in front of Linder. What's your problem, Voss? He hasn't done anything. Voss smirked. You really don't know, do you? He took a slow step forward, gun still raised. This thing isn't just some lost alien. He's a mistake. An anomaly. A threat. Linder's veins pulsed brighter, but he stayed silent. Your people left you behind for a reason, Voss continued, eyes locked on Linder. And now, you'll disappear for good. Linder clenched his jaw. He had spent his whole life being hunted, rejected, and ignored. But not this time. His veins flared a brilliant silver, and before Voss could react, Linder moved. The truth revealed. A split-second decision. Linder lunged forward, his veins burning with energy as he grabbed the barrel of Voss's pistol. A surge of static crackled through the air, and the metal overheated in an instant. What the? Voss yanked his hand back, dropping the weapon as it sizzled against the floor. The two security officers beside him raised their rifles, but before they could fire, Dane slammed the airlock controls. Move, now. Linder shoved Voss back and dived through the hatch as it slammed shut. The red warning lights flickered across the metal surface, signaling the lock sequence had been activated. Override it, Voss's muffled voice barked from the other side. Dane panted, pressing his back against the door. That won't hold them for long. Come on. They bolted through the dimly lit cargo bay, their footsteps echoing against the cold steel floor. The place had been abandoned for years, dust-covered crates, rusted docking equipment, and inactive transport ships lined the massive room. Where are we going? Linder asked. Dane led him toward a set of control terminals near the far wall. If we can power up one of these old transports, we can get out of here before Voss busts in. Linder eyed the inactive ships warily. These are ancient models. Do they even work? Dane grinned. Guess we'll find out. A secret Voss didn't want known. As Dane worked on the ship's control panel, Linder's mind raced. Why had Voss said he was a mistake? An anomaly? His own people had abandoned him long ago, but they had never explained why. He had spent years searching for answers, hiding from those who wanted him dead. But Voss knew something. He knew the truth. Linder clenched his fists. I need to know why he's after me. Dane didn't look up. I think we already know. He's a xenophobic prick who wants aliens off his station. No. Linder's voice was firm. This isn't just about me being Draenei. There's something else. Something bigger. Dane's fingers hesitated over the control panel. You think he knows something about your past? Linder nodded. He said my people left me for a reason. I need to know what that reason is. Dane sighed, running a hand through his hair. Then we need leverage. He turned back to the controls. Get ready. We're not just escaping. We're going to find out what Voss is hiding. Breaking into the database. The transport ship roared to life, its systems flickering as power surged through its circuits. Linder moved to the co-pilot's seat, scanning the cargo bay's security grid. They'll track this ship the second we launch. Dane smirked. Not if I tell the system we never left. He plugged into the station's network, fingers flying over the keys. A few seconds later, the security feed looped back, showing an empty bay. There. To them, we're still sitting here. Linder stared at him, impressed. You're more than just a mechanic. Dane shrugged. I tinker. As the ship's systems fully powered up, Linder's mind focused on the next step. Before we go, we need to access Voss's files. Dane whistled. You're really doubling down on this bad idea, huh? Linder met his gaze. If Voss is after me, then he knows something no one else does. I need to see those records. Dane hesitated, then nodded. All right. Let's steal some classified intel. A shocking discovery. It took minutes to break into the Terra Station archives. Dane worked fast, bypassing firewalls and encryption layers. He's got personal records locked away in a classified directory. Linder's veins pulsed. Open it. The screen flickered, revealing restricted files marked Omega Protocol. Dane's face paled. What the hell is this? Linder scanned the text. It was a report, a classified experiment. Subject name, Linder, 7. Designation, prototype hybrid. Status, failed containment, deemed a threat to planetary stability. Linder's chest tightened. This isn't possible. Dane pointed at the genetic report. Linder, these aren't just random logs. This says you weren't just abandoned. You were made. Linder's mind reeled. His whole life, he had believed he was just a rejected Draenei exile. But the truth was worse. He was a genetic experiment. Voss's real plan. Before they could process it further, a red alert blared through the cargo bay. They found us. Dane cursed. We need to go. Now. They sprinted to the cockpit, but as Linder strapped in, his heart pounded. He wasn't just running from Voss anymore. He was running from the truth. And now that he knew what he wasn't sure he could ever escape it. A fight for the future. The transport ship shook violently as it lifted off the ground. Red warning lights flashed across the console, alarms blaring throughout the cargo bay. "Hang on," Dane shouted, gripping the controls. Linder barely had time to brace himself before the ship rocketed forward, narrowly dodging incoming fire from the security forces below. Explosions burst across the docking area, metal debris flying as Voss's men desperately tried to stop them. "They're not letting us leave without a fight," Linder growled. Dane's face was set in grim determination. "Yeah, well, too bad for them, we're leaving anyway." He punched the thrusters, sending the ship into a steep ascent. The artificial gravity struggled to keep up, pressing them against their seats as the vessel hurtled toward the station's outer docking shield. Linder turned to the monitor, watching the chaos unfold behind them. Security drones were already in pursuit, swift and relentless. And in the middle of it all, Commander Voss. His expression was cold, calculated. But there was something else in his eyes. Something Linder hadn't seen before. Fear. A deadly pursuit. "Dane, how good are you at dodging missiles?" Dane shot him a look. "Terrible time for sarcasm, man." "Not sarcasm," Linder pointed at the radar. "They just locked onto us." Before Dane could respond, the ship lurched violently, a missile streaking past the hull. The shockwave sent them into a spin, alarms blaring as the navigation system struggled to compensate. "Okay, yeah, not great," Dane admitted, gripping the controls. Linder's mind raced. They needed a way out, fast. Then he saw it. Beyond the security perimeter, just past the station's defense grid, lay a derelict asteroid belt. "Head for the debris field," Linder shouted. Dane blinked. "You want me to fly into a death trap? They won't follow us in there." Another explosion rocked the ship. Dane gritted his teeth. "Screw it. Hold on." He pulled the controls hard to the right, sending the ship into a sharp dive toward the asteroid belt. The security drones followed, at first. But as soon as they crossed into the jagged debris field, the pursuers hesitated. One drone tried to follow, only to be crushed between two colliding asteroids. "Told you," Linder muttered. Dane exhaled sharply. "Remind me never to doubt you again." But their relief was short-lived. A new alert flashed across the screen. Incoming transmission. Voss's last warning. Dane hesitated before pressing the button. Voss's image appeared on the main screen, his expression deadly serious. "You think this is over," he said. "You have no idea what you've just done." Linder's veins pulsed. "We know the truth now. About me. About what you did." Voss's lips curled into something resembling amusement. "Oh, you think you know the truth? Boy, you don't know anything." Linder clenched his fists. "You lied to everyone. You made me, then called me a mistake." Voss's expression darkened. "And you still don't understand why, do you?" Linder didn't answer. Voss leaned forward, eyes cold. "You were created to be a weapon. A hybrid of Draenei and human, something more powerful than either species alone. But you were flawed." Linder's pulse quickened. "Flawed how?" "You weren't controllable." The words hit Linder harder than any missile. Voss continued, voice like steel. "You don't belong to the Draenei. You don't belong to humans. You are something else. Something that should never have existed. Linder's breathing was shallow. He had always wondered why he was different. Why he had been abandoned. And now he knew. He was never meant to live. Dane cut the transmission. Screw him. Linder stared at the blank screen, his hands shaking. What if he's right? Dane turned to him, his gaze unwavering. Does it matter? Linder looked up. You're alive. You made it this far. And you sure as hell aren't some mistake. Linder exhaled slowly. For the first time in his life, he let himself believe that. A new beginning. As the asteroid belt thinned, the vast expanse of space opened before them. Freedom. Dane set their course toward uncharted territory. Where to? He asked. Linder stared at the stars ahead. Somewhere Voss can't reach us. Dane grinned. That narrows it down. As the ship soared into the unknown, Linder glanced down at his glowing veins. He wasn't sure what the future held. But for the first time in his life, he had a future at all.